Well, hello, my little trailblazers. We are ready to talk some more about these westward trails that we read about a couple days ago. And so the rest of the week, we're going to spend some time reviewing the two lessons we did from our textbook with some other additional text here. This one's called Westward Ho. We're going to head out west. And so, like I said, this reviews some of the trails going west that we talked about on Monday. I like the Oregon Trail and the California Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, and then the Mormon Trail. So let's read this text together. We've got 4 pages to read, and then I'll have some questions for you. So here we go. Phone's always ringing when I'm trying to record. Westward Ho. Remember Lewis and Clark? In the decades after their journey, very few Americans went west of Missouri. Those who did were military surveyors, fur traders, or mountain men. They were sort of like the long hunters of early Tennessee history. They had big long guns and they would go on long hunts, so they were called long hunters. Tennessee native Joe Walker was one of these men. Born in 1798, Walker joined a hunting expedition to the Rocky Mountains when he was 20. The Southern Rocky Mountains were part of Mexico at the time, and Walker and his friends were arrested by Mexican authorities and spent some time in jail. Walker stayed out west and became a trapper and a trailblazer. In 1833, he and other men were exploring California when they got lost and had to eat some of their horses to stay alive. What do you think about that? These guys were out blazing trails. They were on these new trails, roaming all over this new land. They got lost, so the only way they could survive was eat some of their horses. However, they later found something that no citizen of the United States had ever seen: the beautiful Yosemite Valley with its huge cliffs and waterfalls. Another great trailblazer and mountain man was Jedediah Smith. Smith discovered that South Pass, Wyoming, was the best place to cross the Rocky Mountains. Listen to how tough this guy was. He was so tough that he once had to have his scalp sewed back on after a grizzly bear had torn it off. Sounds like a fun life, huh? I guess you'd have to be pretty tough to be a trailblazer and exploring these trails with the dangerous animals, and I wouldn't want to have my head sewed back on, my scalp. All right, let's get into the Oregon Trail. We learned a little bit about it Monday. By 1840, thanks to trailblazers such as Walker and Smith, people knew the best way to get across and around the mountains, canyons, rivers, deserts, cliffs, and to the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't the path taken by Lewis and Clark. The better route was the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail started in Independence, Missouri. From there, the route went across the Great Plains of Kansas and Nebraska into Wyoming, where the Rocky Mountains began. The trail passed beautiful landmarks with names. And I'm going to pause right here. Look right here. This is a painting of what it might have looked like to camp out on the Oregon Trail. Pretty nice. A little scary, I guess, but looks like a beautiful place. So the trail passed beautiful landmarks with names such as Courthouse Rock, Chimney Rock, Scotts Bluff, Independence Rock, Devil's Gate, before going through the South Pass, which was sort of the halfway point. From there, the trail continued around mountains, through valleys, and past the occasional Army fort, all the way to the Columbia River and the Pacific Ocean. Let's see what landform this is up here. It says that's Scotts Bluff. That's beautiful, isn't it? That's another stop on the Oregon Trail. People who took the Oregon Trail loaded all their possessions into wagons known as prairie schooners. The wagons were led by oxen or mules, carried food, ammunition, tools, buckets, furniture, clothing, chickens, and anything else they could. Why do you think they had all that stuff? Well, they had to take it with them because they couldn't buy it more than likely anywhere. There wouldn't be any stores on a land that's never been settled before. What do you think they brought chickens? Were they the pets? I guess they want some chicken legs for supper, didn't they? They eat, of course, and for eggs. I've covered it up there. Only the driver got to ride. Everyone else walked, along with any cattle or sheep that might be coming along as a food supply. To some people, the trip on the Oregon Trail was the adventure of a lifetime. Migrant Joseph Hackney said Chimney Rock was the most remarkable object that I ever saw, and if it were in the States, it would be visited by persons from all parts of the world. When Thomas Easton saw Scotts Bluffs, he wrote that a more beautiful and majestic scene cannot be conceived. How wonderful, how great, how sublime are thy works, O God! However, a woman named Luzina Wilson took the Oregon Trail and wrote about how boring it was. Hey, before we read the next page, why do you think these landmarks were so important? Well, there wouldn't have been road signs to say 50 miles to Knoxville, would there? But from other trailblazers, other people who had gone down these trails, they might say, well, when you see Scotts Bluff, you're about 1/4 of the way there. And so they could describe these landmarks along the Oregon Trail, and they could know kind of how close they were to where they're going. I bet you've asked your mom and dad, are we there yet? And so these landmarks would show them how close they were to getting to where they were headed to. So this lady wrote about how boring the Oregon Trail was. She said, day after day, week after week, we went through the same weary routine of breaking camp at daybreak, yoking the oxen, cooking our meager rations over a fire of sagebrush and scrub oak, packing up again, coffee pot and camp kettle, washing our scanty wardrobe in the little streams we crossed, striking camp again at sunset or later if wood and water were scarce. So she didn't like it, did she? Would you have liked to do all that, ride all day long in a wagon for weeks and weeks and not have much food? It would have been hard, wouldn't it? It would have been tough, crossing dangerous land. In 1841, a single wagon train of about 60 people left Independence, Missouri, and made it all the way to Oregon. The number of migrants rose to about 1,000 in 1843 and 3,000 in 1845. Those were people moving out west on the Oregon Trail. So 3,000 people by 1845. In the early years, people left in large groups and were led by experienced guides. But by around 1850, people didn't need guides. Some took maps and followed the ruts in the ground left by wagons that had already gone. Some of those ruts in the ground are still there today. If you were to go out west and see the Oregon Trail, there's still ruts in the ground from their wagons because so many went and put big holes in the ground, big ruts in the ground. About 90% of the immigrants who set out on the journey made it. The greatest cause of death was disease. Although some immigrants were attacked by Native Americans, most of the American Indians who they met either ignored the travelers or were friendly and traded with them. In the early 1840s, most of the people who headed west were bound for Oregon. But within a few years, two events occurred that led people to take different trails, such as the Santa Fe Trail or the California Trail. Those were the Mexican-American War and the California Gold Rush. They made people take different trails. And here's a painting of what it might have looked like to camp near Fort Laramie, Wyoming on the Oregon Trail. So you got some Native Americans here, some Indian teepees, and you got your fort, and you got your wagon trains coming down the road. It would have been an adventure for sure. All right, well, let's go answer some questions from this text today. Pictures of the text will be in the questions, so they're easy to go up and find the answers. Get to it. Good luck.